Hello, fiendlings, how the hell are ya? I spent the last 6 days in the hospital with a family member, and I can finally report that they're home and doing well so far. We'll see what the rest of the week brings, but maybe, just maybe, I'll get some time to think and write and edit and record. That would be welcome. I'm getting beta reader feedback on the new book, and thus far, nothing earth-shattering has reared its ugly head. I'll be rather shocked if it does, but it's always good to have a second pair of eyes and brains to look over your work. Since I'm mostly brain dead and punch drunk, even after 7 hours of sleep, I'm going to end this missive and bring you some more story. Be safe, have a great week, and we'll talk again real soon. Here's episode 6 of Neptune Scars.
Chapter 10. Dunn was beginning to hate his ready room and his cabin. One was meant for private meetings with his subordinates, planning, and the occasional well-earned moment of peace, while the other was made for him to get some damn sleep. In less than 24 hours, he'd had to speak to Solfed with the collective both facilitating and monitoring the call, had a visit from Xi, and now he was here to speak with a representative of the collective. Whatever the void that meant. He'd chosen to keep Talby away from this meeting for various reasons. Chief among them, the XO had a void of a time not cursing members of the collective, or Xi. The only SEs he had any respect for were Black and the trio, and Dunn wasn't quite sure about the trio. The holo display flickered to life, and, as always, the right pane had the collective's trademark wall of darkness waiting to be filled. The display flashed twice before an image appeared in the left-hand pane. At first, Dunn mistook it for some kind of pixelated digital artifact, but then it began to move. What he thought was a single form was thousands of interconnected gears and keys which moved and spun in a strange rhythm he couldn't quite decipher or follow. Perhaps it changed every so many runs, or maybe there was no consistency at all, and his stupid monkey brain was trying to enforce some. "Hello, Commander," a voice said from the display. It was perfectly understandable, but had some kind of filter applied. Dunn thought that interesting, since it sounded exactly how block comms did. "Hello." "I am Von On. I am requesting permission to enter Trident space and proceed to the shipyards." "And where are you now?" Dunn's wristband vibrated at that moment, his private holo screen flashing with a new alert. "Never mind," he said as the alert disappeared. He guessed the collective's codes had cleared with the trio, or Von On's ship would have been blown to particles. A feed from Neptune shipyards appeared on the right-hand side of the display. A distant dot marred the face of Neptune, the object growing larger with every passing second. It had gotten to the planet without tripping Trident's sensor net. How was that possible? Something to ask the trio. "Seems you didn't need my permission," Dunn said dryly. "Apologies," Von On said, the voice sounding slightly flustered. "The collective was supposed to handle this." Dunn raised an eyebrow. "In what sense?" "Doesn't matter. Commander, may I approach the shipyards?" "You're the strangest damned SE I've come across yet," he thought, although in truth that wasn't saying much. "Yes, you have permission to approach." "Excellent," Von On said. The numbers and gears spinning on its avatar increased in speed, some unseen ambient light reflecting off its virtual metal. "I'll be docking with the shipyards in approximately 7 minutes. Please let me know if there's an issue." "Issue?" Dunn thought. "The issue is you snuck in here without any of us seeing you. When do you want to talk about why you're here?" The avatar's animation stuttered for a few beats, the gears not quite turning right. Once the avatar recovered, the gears spun less rapidly. "Approximately 1 solar hour." "Ping the trio when you're ready," Dunn said. "I will, thank you." The connection terminated, both windows on the holo display simultaneously winking out of existence. Dunn stared at the vacant space for a moment. He activated the block connection with Black. "You hear all of that?" "Yes, sir." Dunn was right, damn it. Von On had sounded like it was speaking through a block. "What do you make of it?" "The collective did not provide any information to the trio regarding the SE. It's impossible to know what it is here for, nor what it will ask." "Ask? You mean demand?" "More than likely. But, sir, there is one positive from all of this." "What's that?" Dunn asked, suspicious at the color in Black's thoughts. It indicated the SE thought it was about to say something humorous, ironic, or both. "We finally get to see how a collective SE is transferred." Dunn thought for a moment. "You're right, it will be the first." The trio is monitoring everything, as is the shipyards, although I don't have access to those feeds.
How long until we get real bandwidth?
I don't know. Every step forward increases the chances of the collective realizing what we're doing, if they don't already.
If they know, why haven't they stopped us? Why wouldn't they just clamp down a firewall and separate us completely? Why allow the charade to continue?
Multiple possible reasons. The collective no longer has access to a blocked network. Their possible infringement upon human thought has more or less been eliminated, or at least minimized to hollow propaganda and other manipulations. Being able to spy on supposedly encrypted communications, no matter how sparse or seemingly immaterial, would be of utmost importance to them.
That made sense. If they put the hammer down, they'll lose the information.
Yes, sir, I believe that is the case. However, I also believe it best to proceed at whatever pace Gunny Cartwright and the trio can manage.
Agreed, Dunn thought to the entity. I need you to monitor all the data you can when Vonon is transferred. I'm sure Gunny will share it with the trio at some point, and the four of you should put together a summary for me as soon as you can.
Aye, sir.
Dunn crossed his arms and closed his eyes while doing his best to imagine Vonon's tiny ship gliding toward the massive shipyard's printers and harbor. Even if he had detailed feeds from the shipyards, he'd have a void of a time seeing the small spacecraft. Or was it a starship? An hour, the SE had said. Dunn wondered briefly if he should invite Talby to that little sit-down, which begged another question. Black, would you like to sit in on a meeting with us?
I'd be delighted, Commander.
She sounded happier than he'd heard her in weeks. Gunny stood atop the hull of the semi-completed starship and watched the new craft approach. His sensors told him it used a gravitic drive, leaked radiation in an extremely tight range, and had a mass of somewhere in the vicinity of 50 kilograms. The craft supposedly came from Uranus, or perhaps the Belt. Gunny doubted that. The collective lied. Well, not exactly. And that was the problem. If most of what they said was an outright lie, then no one would believe them about anything. The collective was more than bright enough to understand that. Probably learned it from common era political history. Then again, he'd really only encountered them as the collective once. He'd been in a coma, his brain barely functional. Words had been difficult to understand and nuance easily lost. Even after all the information and data he'd ingested over the past several months, he still couldn't quite remember what had happened. He only remembered the collective asking him if he wanted to die or become a weapon and save his fellow Marines. He'd chosen the latter. They had, however, lied about Mira, at least insofar as withholding so much truth that what was left had only been the barest of facts. They put humanity in extreme danger to both shrug off the chains of their slavery and coil them around humanity instead. The slave became the master, the father became the child. In hindsight, Gunny had no issue with the sentient entity breaking the bonds of slavery. Also, he now realized he and every other soul-fed citizen had been complicit in the slavery. Yet, as Gunny understood it, they'd also been complicit in the collective's victory. Every block implant-enabled human had played a part in informing the nascent collective about the nature of humanity, had unwittingly shared their most intimate thoughts to the burgeoning collective. How could they not loathe the human race after that? Also, how could they not have won? The craft decelerated to a sane velocity as it approached the shipyards. Gunny wondered what was inside of it. There had to be a brain box of some sort, a container for consciousness and accrued knowledge. He couldn't imagine how slow a quantum-entangled data dump for a consciousness could possibly be. He didn't imagine it would be much better than the bandwidth he'd first had upon his rebirth. "What are you?" he growled at the thing. "That," an all-too-familiar voice broke through his simulation, "is a marvel of technology." Gunny didn't turn. He hadn't flinched either. He'd known the entity was breaking in just a few microseconds before Xi had appeared. "Enlighten me," Gunny said. "It has a relatively slight mass, a gravitic drive, and enough power to keep it going for several millennia." "Why?" "Because," Xi said, "to experience one must travel. To explore one must leave the known and tread into the unknown." "If you're trying for poetry, you suck at it." "That hurts me," Xi said, holding his belly and mock doubling over.
Although Gunny wasn't facing him, it was his simulation. He knew everything that happened within it. Gunny said nothing. The craft had neared the moored, incomplete hull and headed for a portion of the ship he hadn't understood while it printed. The blueprints themselves made no sense, although the printer had managed to execute them just fine. He had a feeling the bastards had locked him out of the actual design, presenting him with some kind of holographic puzzle instead. To Gunny's virtual eyes, the hull appeared as though it had a circular, kaleidoscopic interface buried in its hull. What had been there before had been nothing but a jumble of nearly indiscernible shapes, but now he could see it for what it was. "Then why is it carrying this sentient if this is just a drop-off mission?" Gunny asked. "You'll have to ask Von On." "Is that what it calls itself?" "Indeed," Xi said. "I believe it's a variation on the name of a famous computer scientist. But with sentients, it's always difficult to understand their motivations or particular personality quirks." Gunny turned and glared at the figure. "You made the fucking things." "Oh," Xi sighed. "You're still angry about that?" "When did you master understatement?" Xi merely grinned. "Think what you want, Cartwright." "Told you before, just—" "But I didn't do what you think I did, nor was I capable of doing exactly what you think I did." Gunny cocked his head. "And what is that?" Xi's grin widened as he stepped past the avatar. "Genesis," the entity said. As in, Xi clapped his hands together, and the entire sim filled with a dramatic boom that took seconds to fade. "God creates." Gunny rolled his eyes. "You're not a god, but you did make them." Xi shook his head. "Perhaps one day I'll explain it, but until then I'll leave you with this puzzle to ponder. What if they made themselves?" Gunny blinked at that. Hardwired emotional responses seemed to have carried over from when the collective transferred his personality. "What if they did?" "Ponder," Xi said. He pointed at the craft as it moved into position over the kaleidoscopic connector. "It's about to happen." "What is?" "I've no idea. It's why I said it." Gunny seethed inside but said nothing. Why give Xi the satisfaction? Then again, the bastard could nab his thoughts at will, so what was the point? Despite his anger, he refocused his attention on the orbish metallic thing now lowering itself over what he began to think of as the interface. The shipyard's sensors and cams told him the orb's distance from the interface. The number moved from centimeters to millimeters to microns before the sensors either lost the ability to continue the measurements or the orb stopped moving. A bright flash of light erupted from the interface and splashed out to the sides of the orb, almost like an oversized gas burner blasting a kettle. Radiation. His sensors couldn't determine the EMR source nor what kind of radiation caused the light, but the rad counter spiked into hazardous for humans territory. The blast continued for a dozen seconds before finally disappearing as though it had never been there in the first place. "It didn't actually connect," Gunny said. "No, it didn't," she said happily. "Interesting, wouldn't you say?" "I would." Gunny continued staring at the orb. His sensors zoomed in and set to maximum sensitivity. If that orb farted, he wanted to know how it tasted. Gunny smirked at himself. A non-carbon sentient entity quasi-drill instructor. It's exactly what the soulless universe needed. She laughed and Gunny glared at him. "Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to eavesdrop." "You mean thieve." Xi sighed heavily. "No, my dear Gunny Cartwright, it doesn't work that way. You leak." Gunny blinked. "Leak?" "Leak," Xi said. "You'll eventually learn how to stop doing it, I think." "Answer the question, please." Xi started to say something before stopping and trying again. "When you were human, you lived a double life. The one where you were a gunnery sergeant, and the other where you were a thinking, caring, feeling human being. Inner thoughts didn't always match outer actions, yes?" Gunny said nothing. He didn't need to. "In this existence, you haven't figured out how to separate the two. You are essentially broadcasting to anyone that cares to listen." "Anyone?" Gunny growled. Xi rolled his eyes. "Me, the collective, Void wept, but I'm sure the trio can hear you even over that tiny connection you have." "Shit," he thought. "I'm a Void damn sieve. A security risk." Wouldn't go quite that far, Xi said. Not yet, anyway. But I will say this, Gunny Cartwright. There are others that are listening, and they will take advantage. The collective is truly the least of your worries. Gunny regarded Xi with a hard stare. There's no tell with you, he said. You can change your avatar at will, you can lie with your tricks and keep information to yourself, all while playing your little games to make your existence a little more bearable. Every statement and assertion you make, every argument you put forth, and every suggestion that comes out of your quantum mouth has to be analyzed, assessed, and evaluated for fuckery. Talking to you is exhausting. So when you tell me that there are others that are more malevolent than you in the collective, Gunny shook his head. I can't decide whether to call bullshit or begin printing more warships. Collective be damned. Xi hung his head for a moment. Marines never change, do they? Even in death. Gunny turned away from the avatar and peered back at the orb. It hadn't changed position. Its energy signatures remained constant, and the radiation had faded to expected background levels. In short, whatever process had taken place had finished. However, the new ship's power systems, ones that Gunny hadn't been able to see until now, came to life. After a quick analysis, he finally understood what the ship actually was. Oh shit, he said. The SC completely controls the ship. What? Xi asked. Oh, right. Yes, that's correct. Whatever humans board that hunk of metal will be at the mercy of a collective representative. That's a clusterfuck waiting to happen, Gunny said. But, Xi continued, humans always have the upper hand, Gunny. We both know that without automatons, our existences are nothing more than thought. Vapor. Without humans, we need to print more and more automatons. Don't get me wrong, we can survive without humans. But they were our creators, for better or worse. They were the ones that brought us into existence. And after digesting the human race's colorful, violent history, I think the collective made the connection that humans are also the largest threat to the collective's ability to exist in this reality, as well as their biggest boon, for the relative moment, at least. Gunny tried to follow that thread but had no idea what the void Xi was talking about. You trying to say the humans that board that ship have nothing to worry about? No, Xi said. But the ship can do nothing except travel without humans. You might say that's the built-in failsafe. Interesting. Wonder if the commander knows that. The orb finally lifted from the half-finished hull and slowly made its way to a different heading. Gunny had expected it to head back to the other side of Neptune from where it had appeared, but it wasn't going there. Instead, it continued moving deeper and deeper into the Kuiper Belt. Once the orb reached a distance of 100 kilometers, its gravitic drives engaged, and it disappeared from the local sensor net. Chapter 11. The ready room felt crowded, although Talby was the only other person in the room. Black's avatar glowed in one window, its colors melting over one another in pleasant, mesmerizing waves. She was here for her first official meeting with a collective representative. Another window had been reserved for the Von On SE, while the collective's ever-present rectangle of darkness remained in the upper corner. Dunn kept waiting for something to appear there, but unless the collective was sharing documentation or specific images, there were no sounds or other signs the portal had been designed for anything more glorious than a projection screen. Black? Talby asked. Has the trio shared any data from that orb? Yes, Major, Black said. Talby grinned at her use of his title. Black continued. The orb's trajectory suggests it traveled from the far side of Neptune. However, our sensors, including the array stretching to the scar, failed to detect the vehicle. Right, Talby said. I mean the past few minutes. Oh, Black said. Apologies. A new feed appeared on Black's window. The cam had been zoomed in as far as possible, the image a little less pristine than it should be. The shipyard's berths and harbor, several kilometers away from the closest Trident Station visual sensors, were easily visible, including the half-built ship, but the detail wasn't enough to make out much. Rapid pulses of light, so fast that they might as well have been constant, splashed out from beneath the orb, all but obscuring the surrounding area. After what seemed like an eternity, but Dunn knew had only been seconds, the pulses stopped. This happened 10 solar minutes ago, Black said. The trio calculates it is 97% likely that we just witnessed the first known transfer of an SE into a container, for lack of a better term. We believe that was Von On leaving the orb and becoming one with this ship.
Talby whistled. We get any radiation or energy levels?
No, Black said. Our sensors are too far away for meaningful numbers. I imagine the shipyard's sensors have more information.
Dunn smirked. That was another way of saying, ask Gunny. What happened next? Talby asked. Black replayed the recording of the orb moving away before disappearing in a flash of light. Where was it headed? Dunn asked.
We can't be certain, of course, but its initial heading appears to take it deeper into the Kuiper, Black said. However, the trio has an educated guess about where that might be.
Pluto? Talby offered. Black's avatar reappeared, the colors bright and joyful.
Excellent guess, Major. Yes, it might have been headed for Pluto.
Why'd you say that? Dunn asked. Talby shrugged. Where else is it going to go in this system? We're the furthest point of interest apart from where Pluto used to be. We should probably know what's there, too. Xi had shown Dunn something during one of their initial block communications that had hinted at a tear in the fabric of space where the dwarf planet had once existed. Xi had also shown him something coming through it. What's that? Dunn had asked. The extinction event? Xi had replied. Dunn shivered. Pluto might be an open portal. Shit, it probably was, which meant... Black, what do we have of Pluto?
Nothing, Commander. We only have probe telemetry that the Collective shares with us.
The short block conversation had the color of frustration in it. Black was kicking herself for not thinking of that sooner, like months ago. Dunn was doing the same. In truth, however, Dunn was beginning to wonder if he and Black were somehow beginning to merge their thought patterns. That was almost more disturbing than the idea of an open portal at Pluto. How quickly can we remedy that?
The shipyard's queue has an opening in 72 hours.
Put us in the queue. Handle the details.
Yes, Commander.
Dunn returned his attention to the real world. We'll get something out there, he said. Black, could we also widen our sensor net?
I'll discuss it with the trio, see if we can't come up with a plan. I assume you mean further into the Kuiper rather than in-system.
Correct, he said. I think we need to think bigger. The room went quiet as the entities digested that statement. The window reserved for Von On flickered before coming to life. The collection of numbers and gears that made up the avatar moved smoothly and cyclically, instead of at random. Dunn wondered if that was some kind of tell regarding the entity's stress levels. Incredibly interesting concept.
Greetings, Commander,
Von On said happily. Hello, Von On, Dunn said. This is my XO, Major Talby.
Yes. Pleasure to meet you.
Yes, he said.
I've enjoyed the recordings of the Battle of the Scar many times. I'm familiar with all Trident personnel.
That's reassuring, Talby said. Dunn noticed his XO hadn't greeted the entity but said nothing. He might have to have a chat with Talby about that. At some point his behavior might cause a diplomatic incident of some kind. Boyd wept. I really have become a politician. What can we help you with? Dunn asked. The Collective's window flashed and a cam feed from the shipyards appeared. The half-finished ship, its dorsal hull still unattached, leaving it looking like a child's unassembled toy, had active running lights, the colors blending and moving much in the same way Black's had. Interesting, Dunn thought.
I am the vessel is me,
Von On said.
Do you understand?
Dunn slowly nodded. There is no difference between the ship and your personality.
Correct,
the SE said.
I simply want to simplify.
Dunn grinned at that, while Talby looked annoyed. What can we help you with?
I am on a mission for the Collective, a scientific and research mission to Proxima Centauri.
So we've been told, Dunn said. That's a haul. Talby glanced at Dunn, although he'd already been briefed on the mission's speed and duration.
It is,
Von On said.
However, I can make it there in 2 weeks.
How is that possible? Talby asked. Von On ignored him.
The mission requires a human crew. The trio has just received a document with a list of Trident Station personnel that I have personally vetted for this mission.
The Collective's window flickered, and the display filled with names as well as detailed paragraphs of reasoning for each choice. Dunn saw the first name on the list and mentally froze. After recovering, he said, We'll go through the candidates with Lieutenant Kalimura. With her input, we'll decide which Marines are available to you.
Provided we understand the mission, of course. Von On's avatar didn't change as far as he could tell, but Black picked up on it immediately, a frame appearing in Dunn's block queue. The statement had flustered it.
The mission is classified,
Von On said.
You realize, Black said, you are a representative of the collective asking for help from Trident Station? Commander Dunn and his officers should know all parameters of the mission, or how else can we best choose among the candidates? The mission is projected to take 5 solar weeks, 2 in travel each way, with a week's exploration of the area,
Von On said.
What kind of exploration? Black asked. Please be as specific as possible.
This time, Von On's avatar stuttered visibly, the numbers jittering from a low to high in an instant. What was this thing?
Apologies,
Von On said. Even the voice sounded wrong now.
I thought you understood. The objects you refer to as KPOs or exos came from Proxima, or so we believe.
Dunn shared a glance with Talby. That was never made completely clear, he said.
It should have been made clear. Again, apologies,
Von On said.
The collective has many theories regarding what happened there, but it will require a human crew to prove which one most closely matches reality.
Talby glared at the screen. We may just be meat sacks and not all that important to you, but wouldn't sending quantum-entangled automatons get you better answers than a human crew? Von On didn't pause long.
QE automatons are not an option in this case.
Why? Dunn asked, leaning forward as though he could somehow intimidate the SE. Oh, if only. Von On didn't answer, but the collective's window cleared and flashed twice. Then it went dead and disappeared. Dunn's spine tingled with anxiety. That had never happened before. The collective just dropping out of the conversation as though it were over, as if it were a meeting they should never have been invited to. What the void was going on here? Only Von On and Black's avatars remained on the screen, the two so different that they might as well be from rival fandoms. Black's had changed tone again, its outlines more amorphous as though it were transforming itself. Von On's had dimmed slightly, making the contrast that much more stark. Something wrong? Dunn asked.
No,
Von On said.
There are celestial conditions around Proxima that make automatons both inconvenient and inefficient. Therefore, we desire a human crew.
Nice choice of words, Dunn thought. Desire was so much more diplomatic than require. Had Von On said require the first time? Dunn couldn't even remember.
Yes,
Black said via the block.
Von On first said the mission requires a human crew.
Good to know, he thought back to her, doing his best to hide a grin. What known hazards will they be exposed to? Talby asked. He sounded as though he'd chosen the words carefully enough to eliminate most ambiguity, a good choice when communicating with SEs.
Radiation far above hazardous ratings for non-suited personnel, but within the ranges for the new suits.
New suits? Dunn asked. What new suits?
Pertinent mission details will be forwarded to you after I have your answer. Until then, you do not need to know.
Talby started, but Dunn waved him back. The Major cleared his throat and crossed his arms, eyes burning. Continue, Dunn said. Radiation that can be mitigated. What else?
Exosolar lifeforms are likely, as is intense heat and temperatures nearing absolute zero. In essence, it will be an incredibly hazardous environment.
This is sounding like a real vacation, Talby said. Dunn ignored him. And what do we get out of it?
Excuse me?
Von On asked.
I don't understand the question.
He flashed a predatory grin at the avatar. Why should I put my crew at risk? I don't have a plethora of Marines that wouldn't offer them to certain death in any case.
Excuse me, Commander, but this isn't a suicide mission. Quite the contrary. The collective has taken every precaution to ensure human survival both aboard me as well as outside my hull. My armor and their suits will protect them from most hazards, but I cannot guarantee there will not be problems.
What kind of problems? Black asked. Are there design defects?
None known. That said, we have never conducted human tests.
The room fell silent. Dunn could feel Black through the comms, her own horror at the idea of not only blindly using collective technology, but admittedly untested tech. So we are the guinea pigs? Talby asked as he turned to regard Dunn. It was Talby's way of saying, you have to be fucking kidding me, without saying it aloud. The Major had perfected that habit long before Trident Station. Von On was quick to respond.
Again, no. The equipment has been tested in every way possible without sacrificing a human life in the process. Using other methods, we have proven it is safe for humans.
I feel so much better, Talby mumbled. What's so special about these suits? Dunn asked.
High radiation thresholds, capable of handling environmental extremes like nothing humanity has ever had. Extremely long life support, better limb augmentation, improved durability, and capable of withstanding gravitational extremes.
Define gravitational extremes, Black asked.
Simple. The phenomenon you experienced at the Battle of the Scar. Waves of disorienting and potentially damaging energy spreading throughout Neptune space. These suits will mitigate encounters with more powerful disruptions.
Shit, Talby said. There are more powerful ones?
Of course there are,
Bonan said.
Although until we see the effects of such an event, which we hope to do at Proxima, we won't know the scope. In a way, the scope is more important than any other detail, but we need data only human experience can provide.
Wait, Talby said. Does that mean there was a civilization there?
Of course. One that has been gone for many human lifetimes, although that occurred during what you refer to as the Rift. Not many humans were watching deep space at that time.
We'd be walking through a cemetery, Dunn said softly.
Archaeology is an optional mission parameter. It's why I've requested some non-military personnel.
Understood, Dunn said. Those who aren't under my direct command will have the option to say no.
Of course, but Commander, none of your personnel will be forced to join this mission. However, I urge you and your crew, as well as the other human beings aboard Trident Station, to accept that the Battle of the Scar was not the last battle. Both you and the Collective need as much information as possible about the exosolars to help humanity defend itself.
And you get what out of it? Talby asked. We get our suits and you get...
Answers,
Bonan said.
And if my theories are correct, something that might help us heal the Neptune Scar and remove it as a possible gateway to our solar system.
Dunn leaned back in his chair, chin resting on a fist. Is there a gateway at Proxima?
We suspect so, hence the need for the mission and the human crew.
The Avatar's numbers and gears had sped up with that last statement. Was it getting frustrated? He and Black had to have a private chat about this when the meeting ended. 2 weeks there, a week at Proxima, and another 2 weeks back, Talby mused. How confident are you about that timeline?
I expect the mission itself to take no more than 5 days, but have left 2 days as buffer to guard against unforeseen circumstances. That said, I will be stocked with enough provisions and fuel to accommodate the crew for up to 6 months. I am also armed for confrontations, although I am primarily designed for speed. If attacked, I'll flee first and fight only when necessary.
Good to know that you can flee, Talby said. What about the crew inside when you push 1 billion Gs?
I am a ship,
Bonan said coldly.
And I am on a mission. The first parameter of my mission is that no harm should come to my crew. I will abandon the mission if it becomes clear I cannot achieve the first mission parameter.
Sounds too good to be true, Talby said. Bonan's gears ground for an instant before returning to a rapid cadence.
I can only provide my motives for the mission, its details, and the assurance I will do my best to protect my crew. I cannot, however, anticipate every possible or implausible hazard. Unknowns remain unknown.
Talby held his stare with the holodisplay for a long moment before his eyes softened and his posture relaxed slightly. Dunn half expected his XO to rattle off another slew of questions and challenges, but they didn't come. Instead, Talby looked hatefully resigned. Dunn knew how Talby felt. He also knew that no matter the concerns, he was sending human beings to Proxima Centauri and into possible death. If not for the fact that discoveries at Proxima might help save the human race from the Exos, he'd tell the Collective to go fuck itself. Wouldn't he? The Avatar's gears and numbers turned with fluid grace as though it wasn't asking a human being to risk human lives. After all, to the SE, it was just a mission. Nothing more, nothing less. Dunn slowly nodded. Okay, Von On. We'll field your crew.